Welcome back, troop, to Let's Tab 59. So this is a video that I've wanted to do for some time, but it's an awkward one for me because I don't want this video to come across as me wanting sympathy or me giving you a sob story. That's not how this video wants to come across, and that's what I've got to try and do in this video. I don't want sympathy. I don't want this to come across in any way like that. I want this video to come across just to tell my experience, my personal experience of being wounded on operations and the journey afterwards. So getting wounded, getting treatment at the regimental aid post, then being evacuated down to a field hospital, being in that field hospital, what was that like, what was that experience like, and then being aeromedied out or casevaced out, if you like, from the theatre in Iraq to the UK. That's what I want to talk about. So it's not, don't think, oh, poor Let's Tab 59. Don't worry about that, I'm fine, everything was fine. A lot of people weren't, of course, and also my experience of it all was in the early days of the Iraq War. In fact, it was a year after the ground invasion, or the invasion of Iraq. So I was there a year afterwards. The invasion went in, as you know, by the Allies in March 2003. And I got to Iraq just a year after, April 2004, for Operation TELIC 4 with the 1st Battalion PWR Battle Group, who was split up. We had a B company were down in Basra Palace, operating down there, and the rest of the battle group was in Al Amara, apart from Y Company and some attached personnel who were down at Simic House in Al Amara City. We were just on the outskirts of battle group in a camp called Abu Naji. Many people have heard that, many of you might have served there. So what happened to me? Well, as you know, many of you will know, veterans that have been out there and other operations. For those of you who don't know, before you deploy, you have all your pre-deployment training. There's a big build-up to actually deploying. And you get given a casualty notification card, which you give to your next of kin. And basically, it's a small plastic credit card type thing. It looks like a credit card. And on there's phone number and contact details. If you've got any concerns about a loved one that's on operations, you can use that, ring through to the Joint Casualty Notification Desk, or what it's called, and they can give you information on that person that's been injured. So all that's in place, and off we go to Iraq. Now, I got wounded, and I got wounded in the camp. I was actually in the camp. The camp was under fire quite a bit. I wouldn't say every day, but most days Camp Abu Naji was taking mortar rounds and Katushka rockets, and that's what got me. We'll talk about those in a moment. Obviously down the road at Simic House, they were getting it worse. They were really getting smashed down at Simic. Abu Naji was getting hit quite a bit as well, but mainly, like I say, from mortars and Katushkas. So a Katushka rocket, for those of you who don't know, it's quite a tall rocket. It's normally fired, it's Russian, it's normally fired from the back of a vehicle, a lorry. It's got multiple tubes, it's like a multi-launch rocket system, quite a primitive one, MLRS. And they'd got those, but what they'd done, the militia, they'd split those tubes up and were firing them individually. So there'd be one or two tubes propped up against something and just fired in the general direction of the camp. So they weren't very accurate, but they were a bit of a pest. So we were taking quite a lot of casualties quite early on in the tour. For instance, I can talk of C Company, because they were located with us at Abu Naji. C Company took 22% casualties in the first 6 weeks. 22% casualties in the first 6 weeks of the tour. They were getting pasted. Everything was getting We had every sort of injury, from heat exhaustion, heat injuries obviously, people breaking their leg, some were injured in petrol bomb attacks, burnt quite badly, gunshot wounds, RPG fragments, all sorts of different injuries. And I think we took our first death quite early on as well. So we were taking a lot of casualties, and I remember in the ops room that had been actually on the wall was a map of the camp, a diagram laid out of all the buildings and roads around the camp. And they were putting little red dots on there to record where mortar rounds or Katushka rockets had landed on the camp. It's quite a big build-up. In fact, bolted next to the ops room was the AG Corps staff, the clerical staff had their room, and they took a Katushka rocket, came through the roof, and I don't think it didn't detonate, but the weight of the rocket came through the roof of the building, and I think somebody hurt their hip. I know it broke their hip. I think it was a female, if I remember rightly, was injured. So that's just give you a picture of the sort of fire we was taking on that particular tour. And as I say, I got wounded. I was actually walking from the cookhouse, from the Sergeant's mess tent, back to the ops room, and there was no warning, there's no whistling, there's no sound of incoming at all. It was just a detonation. It was just over my shoulder. So for instance, if I get you in here, can you see, is that sign there? Where's that sign? So that road sign there, you can see that road sign. It landed about there, and I was positioned like this. It detonated there over my right shoulder. I don't remember hearing a thing. All I remember is out the corner of my right eye is seeing this just dense black grey cloud with like bright orange sparks in it. And I just felt this pressure and the sensation of going forward, and it was a bit like going over the handlebars of a push bike. A sort of sense, I don't know how far away, I went quite away I think. And then I sort of obviously landed, I don't really remember landing. I landed on my back, and I think it was the ATO was knocking around. He grabbed me, pulled me into a building, propped me up against the wall. I couldn't hear much, especially in this right side. Well, I don't remember hearing anything, it's just like a ringing noise. And I sort of felt a bit rough, but I seemed in one piece. So sat there for a minute. There's a soak period after a rocket or mortar attack of half an hour. So from the detonation of the last round landing, you're supposed to wait 30 minutes soak period, make sure there's nothing unexploded or whatever, and no more incoming, and then off you go. So pulled myself together and bimbled back, so I thought there might be other casualties, and I was the air operations officer, and I wanted to know if I needed to launch the IRT helicopter to evacuate anyone. So I didn't wait the full 30 minutes. I got up and I was sort of still a bit shocked, as you can imagine, and covered in dust and stuff. My way back to the ops room, gets to the ops room, didn't feel great. I think it was a day or two later I started to notice a lot of pain down this left shoulder and around the shoulder blade at the back. So I went to the aid post to see the doc and said to him he knew what happened. It was quite well documented what happened to me. And he had a check over me. He said, yeah, the ringing, the noise in your ears will go. That'll dissipate. He said, the pain in your shoulder, he said, here's some bruufing. And happy days. And that's what I did. Started dropping the old bruufing. And that was that. But as time went on, I got more and more pain in this left side. And the ringing hadn't really gone. And I was having to hook this left arm, having to hook it through my belt because the weight of my arm was pulling down on his shoulder. So that's what I did. But it started to get worse. So I went back to the MO. I said, look, this is now about three weeks after it happened. Things ain't right, Doc. So they got a physio come up. A physio had come up from Basra, I think, or from Shaiba, and to treat a few of the lads. And this little New Zealand girl, she was a little New Zealand officer, she'd done a bit of physio on me. and said, yeah, you need a bit more treatment and all that. And then it still didn't make any difference, still dropping the bruising. And then this, the MO, or one of the doctors there, I can't remember now, said, I'll try acupuncture on you, or whatever. So he stuck some needles in my back, done a bit of acupuncture, done nothing, let me tell you, absolutely zip. In the end, 6 weeks after I got injured, I could not even get my body armour on. I couldn't get anything on, any weight on me at all. It's horrendous. Definitely couldn't have used my weapon with both hands. So went back up the med centre, and by this stage, I've got to tell you, I think I've got quite a good pain threshold. I was screwed. I was in too much pain. And so they looked at me. No, we need to get you away for an x-ray. Something's not right with that shoulder. So they bedded me down in the regimental aid post. And there was a few casualties in there, let me tell you, because they was having trouble getting us out and down to Shiver because we were coming under quite a lot of rocket and mortar attack, mortar fire. So they bedded me down, and then they whacked me with the good stuff. They pumped the morphine into me. I think I'd had diazepam or something like that as well. Enough painkillers that let me sleep and took me out of the pain. I wasn't really sure what day it was, to be honest with you, but I do have a memory of being there in the aid post on a stretcher, just doped up to the eyeballs, basically, with painkillers. Hiya. And from memory, I was there about 4 days, I think, in the aid post, bedded down. And then eventually, they came to me this particular day, said, right, we're getting you on the helicopter with some other casualties, you're going down to Shiver, which is south of Basra. I think it's something like a 40-odd minute flight in a Chinook. So we got loaded onto the Chinook, and at this stage, I'd put my arm in a sling. The medical staff at the aid post had put a sling around his left arm, and they tied the knot of the sling on the back of my neck there, and I can remember that really pulling down. It's quite painful. So anyway, I'm on the helicopter with my arm in a sling, and off I go to a load of other people. Some were casualties, some were just going for whatever. Gets to Shiver, landed there. Staff were waiting for us, a bit like MASH. You know, it's a tented hospital at Shiver, field hospital, and people there, wheelchairs and everything. Bung me in this wheelchair, and they wheeled me off the HLS into the hospital. And this is where it's a bit of a surreal experience in a way, because well, obviously I was on a lot of morphine. I didn't know what was going on. I was quite disorientated, and I was still in some pain. I think they'd taken the morphine off me, actually. So they take me into this field hospital. I'm sat in this wheelchair, waiting to go for an x-ray, because we've got an x-ray machine there. And anyway, there's other bits going on, but I won't bore you with that. Eventually it takes me for the x-ray, and then the doctors, his RAF personnel, medical staff, I think, x-rayed me, had come back, and they said, right, Sergeant Major, your neck's broken. My neck was broken. I was like, what? I've been going around cutting about for 6 weeks with a broken neck, thinking I got a stiff shoulder. And all the time my neck was broken. So they put a hard collar on me, on my neck, stuck me in a bed, and didn't say too much else, just managed the pain. So I'm laying in this field hospital now. It was like a leg, the tent was like a long, it's like a spider setup, I think. It was like a bit in the middle. And then there was these wards that were long spider legs going off it. And I was down the bottom, near the broom making kit, near the door you could go and have a fag, that sort of detail. Opposite me, in my bed, was 4 Iraqi militia that had blown themselves up in a bomb. I think one had got both his legs missing, one had got one leg missing, one had got an arm missing, and one was sort of like walking wounded, but certainly the 3 that got limbs missing were just bedded down opposite me. That was pretty weird, I've got to tell you, seeing them laying there with bits and pieces missing. So I'm there, and now here we come to the notification part of it. I got on the phone to, I got a sat phone or a landline phone, I can't remember, at the hospital, and I was able to ring up the battle group and speak to my 2IC and tell him that I'm down here, I don't know what's happening, but crack on. And then I got a phone call, I could make a phone call back home, and I rung a tracer round up and said, look, she's about to go on holiday to Spain with the kids. And I went, look, this is what's happened to me. I'm all right, obviously, I'm on the phone talking to you, don't worry, crack on. So I let her know what was happening. Then a few days later, before she'd gone off to Spain, a few days later, the doctors come and saw me and said, right, you're being evacuated back to United Kingdom. We can't keep you in theatre with a broken neck. So I had no choice. Now that was a bit that hit me quite hard, because I thought, well, I could still sit behind my desk, but obviously I was a risk, I suppose. So I got back on the phone, so I let the tracer round know that I'm being evacuated back to UK, but I didn't know when, and I didn't know where I was going to be going. I had an idea it would be Birmingham, Selly Oak Hospital, but I didn't know for sure. And I certainly didn't know when I was going to be evacuated. So she knew that much. Well then, that was that. So I'm laying there waiting to be evacuated. A few days later, because I had no way of getting hold of Traceround at that stage, Traceround gets out the little plastic card, the Casualty notification, joint casualty notification thing, and rings them up to see if she can get any information about when I'm coming back and where I'm going to be when I get back. This is a card they give you, don't worry, you ring it up, everything will be sorted. Traceround rings that up, somebody answers the phone, she gives them my details and what's happening, and they turn around to her and say, no, he's not in Iraq. There's no record of him being out there. You've got it wrong. And she's saying, no, I haven't got it wrong. I've been writing to him for months. I've had phone calls off him. He's out there. Get somebody who knows what they're talking about. Half an hour later, she does get a phone call back from the notification people saying, yes, there's a higher up officer. Yes, he is out there. Yes, we know what's happening to him. He's coming back on this date, and he's going to be at Selly Oak Hospital in Birmingham. So at least then she finally got the information. Well, I think at that stage, this is 2004, I think with it was a year after the invasion, remember, and it had gone quite quiet. That period after the war was won, the ground war with Saddam Hussein's defeated and all that, the conflict out there had settled down and we weren't taking mass casualties. And I think, and of course, Afghan was going on at the time, Operation Fingal, I think it was going on at the time. That was fairly quiet too. So I don't think we was ready for when it kicked off in 2004, when we got there and the casualties started to come in. I think that could have been the problem. So I then get put onto a stretcher, driven in an ambulance from the field hospital in Shaiba Logistics Base, to Basra Airhead, put on a C-17. That was an experience. Stuck in a big stack of stretchers with other people, gunshot wounds, all sorts of different injuries, and flown back to Bryce Norton. And it's a beautiful summer day. It was summer 2004. But it was cold as far as I was concerned. I was come from 52 degrees. And I'm just in my desert combats with a day sack like this one on the back that had got washing shaving kit and a pair of trainers. I'd got nothing really, very little packed in it. Ambulance from Bryce Norton after a couple of hours sitting in Bryce Norton on the stretcher, taken to, I could point out though, on the C-17, the RAF medics on there, the Aeromed girls, they were outstanding. Well done, the RAF. They really looked after us. So an ambulance from, I don't remember, it's a civvy ambulance, I can't remember, from there, from Bryce to Birmingham Hospital. Gets there, straight up onto a ward, straight into CT scan to check my neck out and all this. But that first night in the hospital, remember this is 2004, there's no help to heroes. I don't think they're expecting loads of casualties. I was pushed into a ward, they changed it from a hard collar to a soft collar around my neck, and I was stuck in a ward with no other military people, it was all civilians in there. There was a guy opposite me that had been in a motorbike accident. There's an old guy next to me, I don't know what was wrong with him. Another guy who kept praying every so many hours, it was weird. And it got to the evening time, and all that was on my hospital bed was a plastic mattress with a sheet on it and a pillow and just a thin crocheted blanket with little holes in it. There's no top sheet, no blankets as such. That was it. And I was cold, and the window was open in the ward. And it's getting to about 9, half 9, still last light sort of thing at that time in the summer. And I was cold. And I stopped one of the nurses that come past and said, listen, I'm freezing here. I said, I've got no underwear on. I can't get out of this kit. I've got no clean kit with me. And I'm cold. And she says, no more blankets. That's what she said to me. She said, there's no more blankets, sorry. So I've hunkered down under this quilt thing, this crochet thing, with my desert kit on still. I'm shivering my nuts off, I've got to tell you. Luckily, a military nurse, an RAF sergeant, came past, a female. And she went, hang on a minute, sir. I know you've just come from blah, blah, blah. And she went off and got me some blankets. So that was good. So that wasn't a good experience. And then I'd been in touch with my old commanding officer, a guy no longer with us, unfortunately, Parachute Regiment, Lieutenant Colonel Freddie Kemp. He was my old CO, and he'd been writing to me while I was out in Iraq. We just got on really well. I used to be a sergeant major, and he's our commanding officer. And once I got back to UK, my mobile phone, a little tiny brick mobile phone, the old little phones, little Nokia thing, and I was able, obviously I'd contacted Tracer and everyone else, told them what was going on. I was able to get hold of him and say, look, sir, don't send anything else out to Iraq. I've been wounded and I'm back in Birmingham Hospital. He was there the next morning. 10 o'clock that next morning, he comes rolling in. He got a little bottle of brandy for me. And his wife was with him. He brought me some strawberries and cream up in a little pot. What do you need? What do you want? And all that. Fine. And he visited me over the next few days. And one afternoon they come to me, the doctors come to me and said, and this is an RAF doctor, an officer. He come to me and said, right, Mr. Potter, Sergeant Major, we're releasing you back to your home. We're sending you home. There's nothing you can do. You'll get dealt with by your MRS down at Shorncliffe at the time. I said, oh, okay, when have I got to do that? He said, well, you go in the morning, stay here tonight, tomorrow morning, get your stuff together, we'll discharge you. I said, how do I get out? I've got no money. He said, I will give you a train warrant. I said, I've got no kit. I said, I'm stood up in the same kit I was out in Iraq with. Big rip in the knee. I was, shit state. He said, no, that's it, we'll give you I said, well, how do I get from the hospital here to the railway station? He said, well, there's a bus outside, or you can get a taxi. I was like, there, I couldn't get my head around that. I thought, are you joking? You expect me to go down there? I've got no money. I thought, how am I going to get a bus? I didn't know where the bus, I had no idea what I was doing. I was still a bit, I don't call it shell shocked, I was still a bit sort of disorientated, if you like. So that night I was a bit worried. There's no way a tracer man could get up to me. So I rung up my old colonel, Freddie Kemp. I said, look, sir, don't come up and visit me anymore because they're kicking me out tomorrow. He said, what do you mean, how are you getting home? I said, I don't know. I said, I've got to get a bus from here to the railway station. They give me a travel warrant. Back down to London, through the underground, to get on another mainline station in London, to get back down to Dover. Can you believe that? In his kit. He went, don't you go anywhere. He said, you stay right where you are, Sergeant Major. He said, I'll be up in the morning. So in the morning, I'm kicked out of my hospital bed. I'm kicked out, discharged out of bed. They got that ready for someone else. And I'm sat in this sort of discharge ward on a plastic chair with my day sack in my combat kit with a pink travel warrant. And up rocks Colonel Kemp. He comes and sees me, he says, right, who's told you can't go and try to that RF guy over there? Right, leave him to me. He went no bad words. He come back and said, no, that's it. He said, nothing they can do for you. He said, well, don't worry. Stay put here. I'm going to send my driver up to pick you up. And he did. About half an hour later, this guy comes in Civic. I take it to Civic guy. Come in and said who I was. And he said, yeah, come on, I'm taking you home. And he drove me back to Kent. So that was that. I get back home and I don't know what day it was. And I was put onto the wire list. I was treated at the MRS at Shorncliffe, and I was receiving physio. There was nothing they could do other than a bit of physio for me and painkillers. And I was off work for about 6 months. So just before Christmas, I went back to work, light duties, back at my job. And I was sat in my office, this particular, I think it was a Friday, and a storeman come, a civvy storeman come in. He said, got your MFO box here? Because obviously I'd left all my kit out in Iraq. One of the mates out there had parceled it all up into an MFO box and sent it through the system. It had travelled all around the country and ended up at my place of work in Shorncliffe on Risborough Barracks. And he brought it in on a pump trolley, this big cardboard MFO box, put it down on the floor of my office and went. And I sat there and stared at this box, all covered in sand and dust. And I was about to open it and I thought, I can't, I don't know what to do. Isn't that weird? I was just stumped. So anyway, I rung a tracer round up. She come down and she opened the box up for me and we sorted through my kit. And of course, they'd put all the last mail that I'd got that had caught up with me. So I'd got letters in there, you know, that hadn't been opened, that had been sent to me. It was all a bit surreal. And that was that. And then I carried on having physio, etc., until I was fit enough to go back to full duties, which I did. But I was fully medically downgraded because of the hearing loss. Lost 80% hearing in the right ear and 20% in the left ear. But of course, I've constantly still got this pain to this day. I've still got it in my shoulder. So what I was trying to highlight in that video is, I say, not a sympathy story, not a sob story. I don't want sympathy. But it's just how unprepared I think the system was, the casualty system, notification, etc., and all that, how unprepared we were back then in that time in 2004. I'm sure there's other people out there that had different experiences to that around the same time. And obviously a lot worse injuries than I had. But that's what I want to do this video about, just to highlight how bad it was back then. So anyway, it's gone on a bit, that story, hasn't it? Hopefully it's not bored you too much. But it's given insight into what the evacuation system was like just for me. I'm not saying that was for everybody's experience. That was my personal experience of it. So that's it. So thanks very much for sitting through all that. I hope it hasn't bored you too much. If it has, sorry. If you're new to my channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider it. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying consider it. Thanks for your support. Keep the comments coming. Let me know what your thoughts are on that video, by the way. We'll have a chat. Keep it all respectful. Don't take the mick too much. Okay, troops, thanks very much. Until the next time, stay safe and remember, let's tab.